Nobody likes going to the dentist. The smell of the chemicals, the sound of the drill, the indignity of talking with someone's hands in your mouth. But as you settle into the dentist's chair, something about this particular visit feels especially wrong. Why are the hygienists looking at you like that? Who is this strange doctor entering the room? And why does your mouth feel so full all of a sudden? You can't move, you can't scream, and your teeth, they're multiplying? The man has been ignoring his persistent toothache for several weeks, but he just can't take it anymore. The dull ache has become a head-pounding throb of pain that cuts through every single thought. But of course, he waited far too long to treat it, and now here he is on a Sunday evening, trying to find a dentist who will give him an appointment. It's not his fault, he tells himself. He's been terrified of the dentist since he was a little kid. It takes a lot of pain to counteract that kind of phobia, but now he's reached that threshold. As he's browsing the internet, desperate to find an office that's open on Sundays, he spots an ad. Dr. Hendricks, dentistry 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. The man isn't sure how that's possible, but the pain has made him desperate, so he calls the number on the ad and makes an appointment. The receptionist sounds a bit funny on the phone, like she has something in her mouth, but he brushes it off. 15 minutes later, he's walking into the office and checking in at the reception desk. The woman sitting there looks a bit unusual, but his mother raised him not to stare, so he gives her a polite, distant nod, declines her request to inspect his teeth for herself, and ignores the strange feeling in his gut at her words. Instead, he continues on to the exam room and waits for the doctor to take his pain away. He waits for quite some time, until he begins to worry that the dentist forgot about him. Or perhaps this office really was too good to be true, and this is some sort of scam. But then the door opens, and in comes Dr. Hendricks with a cheerful demeanor and a smile in his eyes. His mouth is covered with a surgical mask, so the man can't be certain, but he seems like he's definitely smiling. It's a good thing the man came in so quickly, the dentist assures him. His teeth are in dire straits. But don't worry, he's in very, very good hands, and by the time he walks out of the office, he'll be in great shape. The man asks the dentist if he can be put under for the procedure in order to prevent him from panicking. The dentist laughs uproariously at this request, but he agrees. He places a gas mask over the man's face, and the hissing sound of the gas fills the room. The man's eyes grow heavy, and the sterile white room fades to black. When the man wakes up, he's sitting on the sidewalk outside of the office, a plastic bag of mini mouthwash clutched in his hand. And his mouth, oh God, his mouth. It's aching like nothing he's ever felt before. But something else is wrong too. He reaches up to feel around his mouth with his fingers, and all the color drains from his face. His mouth is absolutely crowded with teeth. So many teeth, his tongue can't move without poking up against them. He expected to leave the dentist with one tooth missing, but instead, somehow, he has 30 more than he started with. Unfortunately for this man, who only wanted to have a toothache treated, he stumbled into the clutches of SCP-5150. SCP-5150 is a dental office located outside the northwestern perimeter of Indianapolis, Indiana. The office building occupies an area of approximately 140 square meters, and the interior measures 115 square meters. The building is unremarkable in every way, with the exception of an electrical sign above the building's front entrance, which reads, Dr. John Hendricks, DDS. Inside the building, there are 6 rooms and several anomalous entities designated SCP-5150-1, SCP-5150-2, and SCP-5150-3. SCP-5150-1 is the dental office's receptionist. Of course, as you may have already gathered, she is no ordinary receptionist. The entity has standard humanoid features, with the exception of the oral cavity. The entity's maxillary and mandibular bones, or upper and lower jaw, are disfigured and mutilated and have been noted to have missing incisors, extra canines, and bleeding gums. The entity seems to have an intense interest in human teeth, and once she has gotten her hands on some, her anomalous properties will begin to manifest notably. She will insert stolen human teeth into her mouth and into her gums. This appears to be intended to correct the issues with her oral cavity, but the exact motivation for this behavior is still unknown. Anyone who enters SCP-5150 must interact with SCP-5150-1 at her reception desk in order to continue through or exit the building, regardless of how much aggression she displays toward them. SCP-5150-2 refers to several anomalous dental hygienists that populate the entirety of SCP-5150, with the exception of the waiting area. These entities resemble the receptionist, but move more freely throughout the building rather than being confined behind a desk. They are similarly aggressive and will attack human subjects in order to apprehend them and bring them into one of the examination rooms. They carry a variety of dental instruments on their person and will happily use these instruments as weapons in order to subdue their victims. Once the hygienists have taken a human subject to an exam room, they will strap them to an operating table and prepare them to meet the remaining entity lurking within the office. Then it's time for the unfortunate human subject to meet the dentist himself, SCP-5150-3, also known as Dr. John Hendricks. This entity spends his time in the examination rooms as well as his personal office. When he is presented with a patient, he will begin to insert teeth directly into their mouth, where they will anomalously take root and result in extreme cases of hyperdontia. The source of these additional teeth is currently unknown. Once the operation is complete, and Dr. Hendricks is satisfied with the amount of teeth he has forced into his patient's mouth, he will then attempt to give the subject a plastic bag containing a variety of over-the-counter oral healthcare products. These can include a toothbrush, dental floss, mouthwash, and toothpaste. The subjects will not be allowed to leave the building without taking this bag with them. Analysis of these products has not revealed any anomalous properties. On July 9, 2023, the SCP Foundation conducted an investigation of SCP-5150. Subject D-457142 was ordered to investigate and explore the building. He was equipped with a camera and microphone, as well as a chocolate bar, which was placed in his pocket for emergency use. Control lead was assigned to Bobby Daniels, and Marcus Drago and Andrew Fuller were additional team members on the investigation. D-457142 approached the building, but hesitated before going inside. He asked what would happen after he entered the building, but Daniels refused to elaborate. His questions went unanswered. With no other option, D-457142 entered the building. When he opened the door, a doorbell dinged to signal his entry. As the door closed behind him, he could hear a click as the lock slid into place. This sent the man into a state of anxiety, and he attempted to open the door. It wouldn't budge. He called out to Control over the microphone, begging them to unlock the door, promising that he would not run. Daniels at Control explained that he couldn't do anything about it, as the Foundation had no control over the doors. That lock was all SCP-5150's doing. After some hemming and hawing, D-457142 had no option but to proceed and continue into the waiting area of SCP-5150. Inside, he saw a row of 4 chairs, a smattering of assorted toys common to any medical waiting room, and more chairs. There, off to the side, was the counter, and behind a sheet of glass with a small opening approximately 1.2 meters tall and 0.8 meters wide, the receptionist was waiting. Strangely, the camera feed was not able to pick up any of the receptionist's physical features, leaving the test subject alone to observe her and try to make sense of what he was seeing. Nothing was especially out of the ordinary in the room at first glance, aside from the episode of Buffy the Vampire Slayer playing on one of the waiting room TVs. The subject walked through the room, taking note of everything that he saw. Then he turned to face the receptionist. The receptionist was dressed in a white-collared shirt with a white face mask covering her mouth. There was a sheet of paper directly in front of her. She greeted the test subject. "Hello, sir. Can I help you schedule an appointment?" Unsure of what else to do, the test subject played along. He asked her how to proceed with scheduling, and the receptionist handed him a pen and directed him toward the paper in front of her. She instructed him to sign and then wait for his appointment with Dr. Hendricks in 5 minutes. Once the subject signed the paper, the receptionist stated, "Now, before you can enter, there's one thing I'll need to see." The subject agreed, asking what she needed to see. The receptionist responded, "Your teeth, of course. May I see them?" As you might expect, the test subject found the request off-putting and inquired why she might need to see his teeth. She responded in a friendly tone, "I'm currently taking online classes for dentistry and I need experience. Occasionally patients will let me take a look at their teeth so I can predict how well an appointment with Dr. Hendricks will go. Will you let me try with you?" The subject relented, opening his mouth. As soon as he did, the receptionist reached out and grabbed hold of the lower left quadrant of the man's jaw. The receptionist praised the man's teeth, exclaiming how clean they were. Then she quickly pulled a pair of pliers from underneath her desk, clamping them to the bottom central incisors of the subject's mouth. She pulled toward herself with a sudden, sharp yank, extracting the teeth from the subject's mouth in less than 1 second. The test subject recoiled, clutching at his mouth and screaming in pain and shock. Blood dripped onto the camera lens as the subject struggled to wipe it away. He stumbled toward a nearby tissue box, grabbing a fistful of tissues to sop up the blood and stem the flow. Meanwhile, the receptionist went about her business. She stared at the 2 bloody teeth in her hand, admiration in her eyes. Next, she removed her face mask, revealing her disfigured oral cavity, and began to forcefully insert the new teeth into empty areas of her gums. As the subject backed away from the reception desk in horror, the receptionist called out, "Dr. Hendricks can see you now, sir. Please head to room 3 for your examination." Of course, the subject was reluctant to continue into the building, but Control insisted that he go through the door leading to the exam rooms. At first, he refused, but after a reminder that he was locked in and the promise of a medical team waiting for him after the investigation was finished, he saw no option but to move forward. So he tossed his bloody wad of tissue paper in the trash and pushed through the next set of doors. As before, he could hear the click of the lock behind him, trapping him inside. He stepped carefully into the hallway, pressing his body against the left side of the wall as the sudden sound of laughter echoed through the hall. Where was it coming from? Who could be laughing somewhere like this? He wasn't sure he wanted to know the answer. He continued through the hall, edging along the wall. Suddenly, he froze, crouching down to hide as one of the hygienists exited a nearby door. The entity passed him without noticing him, entering another exam room. The subject continued until he reached the far side of the hallway where a door with the nameplate John Hendricks was waiting. He opened the door and entered. There was no one inside. He checked in with Control, asking for instructions on what to do next. Control advised him to look for anything that could potentially be important. Documents, research papers, journal pages, anything that might shed some light on the nature of SCP-5150. He obeyed and began to search the desk, but found it was empty. Just then, the door to the office opened, and a hygienist called out to the subject, "What are you doing? We have another room waiting for you." At this point, cornered and with nowhere to run, the test subject grabbed his emergency chocolate bar and unwrapped it. At the sight of the sugary treat, the hygienist screamed and backed away. 2 other entities appeared, wielding sharp double-sided probes used during dental examinations. The 3 entities advanced toward the subject. In a panic, he threw the chocolate bar, and it collided with the 3rd hygienist. The entity shrieked, its mouth beginning to bleed as its teeth rapidly decayed. But now the subject was left unarmed and could not defend himself against the assault of the other 2 entities. They grabbed hold of him, one entity stabbing the subject with the probe, while the other bit down on his exposed forearm hard enough to draw blood and crack the bone. As he cried out in pain and fear, with no one able to save him, the subject was dragged to exam room 3. There, the hygienist strapped him down on an operating table, tying him in place with leather straps. "You can trust us, sir," one of the entities said. "We'll just need to pull some teeth before the dentist arrives." At this point, the entities removed the subject's 2 lower canines and 3 molars, all while he remained conscious and screaming. Then the door opened, and another entity came into the room. The doctor was in. At the sight of the dentist, the test subject began to spit various expletives. Dr. Hendricks met the verbal assault with an amused chuckle.
"What a tongue! Why so harsh? Don't worry, this is for your own good. I know it may be scary, but it'll all be done with soon."
The dentist spotted the camera, removing it from the subject's body.
"Is this for a home video? Well, no matter. Technically, this does break some patient-doctor confidentiality laws, but I can let this one slide. Here, let me get this at an angle where it can record better."
He placed the camera in the far right corner of the room, where it captured video of both the subject and Dr. Hendricks. All the while, the subject's mouth continued to bleed. The dentist continued to speak.
"There we go, much better. Now, where were we? Oh, that's right. By the looks of it, it seems like they've already started. It's a shame. Your teeth aren't looking so great right now, but that's why you're here. I can help make it all better."
The dentist retrieved several medical cleaning supplies from the side of the room, as well as an array of syringes. Then, he was ready to work. The test subject's nightmare was far from over. The dentist elevated the operating chair and inserted a Jennings gag device into the subject's mouth in order to keep it open. What happened next could have been briefly mistaken for an ordinary teeth cleaning, other circumstances aside. The dentist used a dental mirror and several tools to pick and scrape at the remaining teeth in the subject's mouth, as if checking for plaque and tartar. Next, however, things got a bit more gruesome. He swapped the probing tools for a dental drill and began to dig into the subject's gums and inner cheeks. The drill was used on the subject's mouth for a duration of 15 minutes. If you're concerned about the lack of anesthetic used during these procedures, allow me to clarify that various high-quality anesthetics were administered. However, they were injected in the wrong locations or at insufficient dosages to adequately reduce the subject's pain. Sadly, he was fully aware of every agonizing sensation. After 2 hours, the dentist cheerfully remarked,
"We're almost done with the cleaning."
He added,
"You're doing just fine. See, I knew you wouldn't be so snappy after I started my work. Don't worry, I'll just have to do one more thing. But before I can do that, I'll have to move your camera. I can't allow this to be recorded. You understand, right?"
He turned the camera so that the lens faced the wall, preventing any visuals of what happened next from being captured. This is especially unfortunate, given that this was the point in the procedure at which the dentist's anomalous abilities manifested. The nature of these abilities is still, sadly, unknown. All that was captured by the microphone was moans of pain and the sounds of crunching as the subject's new teeth crowded into his gum line. After 20 minutes, the procedure was complete, and the dentist handed the subject a bag filled with various oral care items. Eventually, the subject was able to exit the building. When he emerged, he was pale and shaking, with splatters of blood down his shirt and an extreme case of hyperdontia. There were so many teeth present in the subject's mouth that he was unable to speak coherently. He was then taken to Site 334's infirmary, where his hyperdontia was treated and he was debriefed. After treatment, he was given amnestics and released. At this point, any further experimentation with SCP-5150 was suspended, pending the judgment of the Ethics Committee. No follow-ups were conducted with the test subject. Still, I would be personally curious to know if his ordeal left him with a lifelong phobia of the dentist, even after the application of amnestics. I certainly don't believe I would ever be the same again. SCP-5150 was placed under containment within Provisional Site 334. A disinformation campaign and cover story for this provisional site was established concerning the fictional Hops Railroad Company. This was intended to hide SCP-5150 and any of its related media, including poster advertisements, newspaper articles, and social media posts. In the event of unauthorized access to SCP-5150, all personnel were required to be detained and immediately transferred to the on-site infirmary upon exiting the building. Excess teeth would be removed and stored there, and personnel would be given a thorough evaluation before being given Class C amnestics. All on-site personnel who interacted with SCP-5150 in an approved capacity were required to carry one candy bar containing a minimum of 35 grams of sugar at all times. You may be wondering why these containment procedures are detailed in the past tense. Well, there's a reason for that choice. The current containment procedures are no longer up to date, as the anomaly is no longer adequately contained. As of August 1st, 2023, the building originally designated as SCP-5150 is completely absent of anomalous entities or paranormal activity. It is unknown how or why this shift took place, but the anomaly appears to have moved rather than disappeared. On September 22, 2023, posters advertising the dental practice of one Dr. John Hendricks were reported near the city of Greenwood, Indiana. All personnel assigned to Provisional Site 334 have been given a new directive: relocate and recontain SCP-5150 wherever it is migrated to. The dental health of innocent people depends on it. Remember to take good care of your teeth, brush and floss every day, and be sure to attend your regular dental checkups. And of course, always count your teeth before and after an appointment, just in case. Check out the DrBob Patreon and become a junior researcher today. Now go and watch another entry from the files of DrBob, like SCP-011, Dragon Snails.